ah, ah. The bitch hit me with a toaster. Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. We're your hosts, Rob and Liam. And this week we covered 1988's Scrooged, starring Bill Murray, Karen Allen and Bobcat Goldthwait, and directed by Richard Donner. A film that is intended as a comedy, but maybe little in regards to comedy, as the movie's overriding emotions seem to be pain and anger. This is a modern retelling, well, modern in the 80s, of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Does this retelling capture the magic of the original? In my opinion, it does, and then some. A fantastic performance by Bill Murray and a supporting cast that carry this film to be in an annual watch within my family. Now, to be fair, I've said already, mate, I've watched this film every year since it was released. We watched this film every year.
Me too.
It's a Christmas film for us. It's magic. Yeah. It's easy watching as well. I enjoyed watching this film again. I have noticed a lot of stuff that I want to go over, but to start off this podcast, totally enjoyed rewatching this film again.
Yeah, 100%. Like, the thing is, I'm the same as you. I think I've watched this. When you're talking and we are talking about like legitimate Christmas films. I know, you can get into the argument about films like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, and we've already come to the agreement that Die Hard is a Christmas film. But it's not a Christmas film the same way this is. Like, I can watch Die Hard in March. It's fine to watch it as March, despite it being a Christmas film. This is a Christmas film which you're only watching at Christmas. I'm not watching fucking Scrooged in March. That'd be absolutely insane.
And I think those Christmas films are all about like the spirit of Christmas, aren't they? If it's centered around Christmas and not just set at Christmas, that's where the difference happens.
Yeah. No, like you say, that film's set at Christmas, and it still feels like a Christmas film, but this really is. It's absolutely integral to every element. I mean, it's a Christmas Carol. Like, A Christmas Carol is the quintessential Christmas tale. You can't get much more Christmassy than A Christmas Carol. And to be honest, I love just about anything. I love A Christmas Carol so much. I think it might be the most adapted literary work of all time. I'm pretty sure it is, actually. And I love pretty much every adaptation, with the exception of... is it Albert Finney's 1970 version, Scrooge? I absolutely like that version is an absolute travesty. But
I thought you were going to say the Robert Zemeckis Jim Carrey one, because I wasn't.
No, I've got strong opinions on that one. I don't hate it, but we'll get to that later in Legacy. But of all of them, the obvious, if you're looking for a competition, the obvious competition is A Muppet's Christmas Carol. And as much as I love that film, this is the film the same as you, I grew up with. And I do adore this film. I'm not sure if it's objectively the greatest Christmas film ever made, but I think it might be my favorite. And a big part of that is Bill Murray's performance, because in an earlier podcast, we did Groundhog Day. And there are so many parallels in terms of the tone of this, because so much of it's such a dark satire. They're using the structure of A Christmas Carol to get away with a really dark story here about, the kind of evil nature of corporate American TV in the 80s. And Bill Murray is such a dick. He's such a dick. But because when he does turn the corner at the end, and you do have those flashing moments with him and Karen Allen, you want to root for him despite the fact that he's such a bellend. And I think if you don't have Bill Murray in that primary role as Frank Cross, I don't think this film works nearly as well. I think it might be a little bit too dark for its own good, but Bill Murray drags it over the line.
We've said it before about films where it was meant to be this actor or this actor, and you go, I would like to have seen it if it was this actor. I would like to have seen it if it was that. Okay, it might not have been the same. Case in point, you've already mentioned Die Hard. It was meant to be like Richard Gere. And it's just not the same. But in this one, I can't see, you've already said it, I can't see anyone else carrying the film and making Scrooge what it was other than Bill Murray. Because towards the end, you've already mentioned the end as well, where he's meant to be turning that corner, and he's meant to be, he's Ebenezer Scrooge now, so he's just changed. He's now got the joy of Christmas in him. Yeah. Bill Murray is making it like he is having a nervous breakdown live on TV. Like he is.
That's how I've written it. That's how I've written down. It's manic. It's manic. And the thing is, that's what kind of sells me, because it is a bizarre... The final scene of this film, we are jumping straight to the end, but everyone knows the gist, haven't seen this film. It is a manic reaction to the end. But that is the whole point. It's not like a gentle move from, I'm a complete asshole, to I suddenly understand Chris. It's like so dramatic that he doesn't know how to deal with it. It's like almost like this weight's been lifted off. And I think a big part of it is the fact that they do, despite the fact that he's such a bellend, despite the fact that so much of this film is so incredibly dark, they do build up a level of sympathy for the character. Like you realize, like, you know, those lines when they like he's trying to tell the ghost of Christmas past about his childhood, and he's like, no, that's just like, you're so pathetic. That's Little House on the Prairie. He's like, it's the Christmas episode, and it's just like those moments. That is super tragic. He's making up. He's fabricating his own past because he didn't do shit. He just watched TV his whole life. His dad gave him veal for Christmas, which is an absolutely bonkers present, by the way. Yeah. And obviously, it's like, he doesn't just hate people and hate Christmas. He's so jaded, so disconnected. Although he does have this, I don't know how his brother fits into this narrative, because his brother seems so level-headed, but I assume he grew up in the same house. So I'm not sure what happened there. So maybe they had different dads or something. I don't know.
His brother probably following more of his mother or something. I don't know. You mentioned his father and you've mentioned his brother, who were both played by Bill Murray's real-life brothers. And in his brother's Christmas party, the other male guest without the long hair, the one who looked like the brother anyway. Yeah, so
Jesus Christ, how many brothers does he have?
So all of Bill Murray's brothers, all three of them were in this film.
Yeah.
But
it's cool though.
I shed a tear as well. That whole, I wanted a choo-choo train, because again, mentioning my 2-year-old son, at the moment, all he's talking about is choo-choos, and that's his word for it. So when he's going, Dada, I asked for a choo-choo train, and his dad's just shutting him down, and then his mum's calling him Frankie Angel. Dude, I shed a tear. I know
Niagara Falls, Robbie baby.
Yeah, honestly,
it is quite a sweet moment. As I said, you need that because Karen Allen's character is such a sweetheart. Like she's so nice. Like I would argue, if anything, she's a bit too nice in this film, and she's a bit too forgiving because she's so nice. She's so positive, and he's clearly a dick. But she obviously, like us watching the film, like the viewers, you see that little bit of good in him. And because it's Bill Murray and you so want to like him, you can kind of get on board with Karen Allen and be like, oh yeah, I get it. It's because when he's good, he's so good. He's so charming. He's so nice. But he's such a dick. That sometimes you're like, why does she even want to get back with him? So, although Karen Allen does have one moment when she's a complete dick. I'm siding on Frank Cross's team when it comes to when he was he Poochie or something?
Yeah.
When he was the dog. Yeah. And she shows up and he's about to get his big break. And the boss of the whole company says, oh, you've got to come around to dinner. And he tells her, like, well, we've got to go to dinner with my boss. And she's like, no, we've got to go to our friends for Christmas. So come on, man. This is a big break for him. And that one situation, I was actually with Frank. I thought she shit the bed on.
I'm not too sure because you've already had, she said, we've had plans for 6 months and stuff. They've already started cooking. You're an hour away from going to dinner, so I'm not too sure on that one. But you've already mentioned Karen Allen, so I want to go back before we move on. When they're exchanging gifts.
Claire, I should call her Claire. I keep calling her Karen Allen. It is
He's
Claire,
never loved anybody enough to give 12 sharp knives to.
Which is fantastic.
She's given him the Kama Sutra, but yet there is a sex swing in the kitchen.
Well, there's a few issues here. I've never noticed the weird sex. The first thing when I was watching it, it was the first time I was like, no, he's given the much better gift, the much more grown-up gift. The Kama Sutra is the kind of present you get someone on, like, oh, it's your first Christmas together, a nice little joke. You get a Kama Sutra. You get someone a collection of 12 quality knives. One, that's not cheap. Two, that shows a level of commitment, I think. If I bought my wife 12 quality knives for Christmas, I think she'd actually be pretty happy. If I bought my wife the Kama Sutra 19 years into our relationship for Christmas, and that was the only present I got her, she would be fucking furious.
But also, hang on.
More important note is the one you've already made. They do apparently have a sex swing in the kitchen, in the fucking kitchen.
On Claire's defense, that was one present on Christmas Eve, mind. The rest would be an open Christmas Day. We didn't see Christmas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll give
so they get one on Christmas Eve. So he's done the knife, she's done. So I'm sticking up for Claire.
A great opening present. It's a great. I'm just saying, of the two presents for a grown-up couple, we're not teenagers anymore, Rob.
No.
Fuck the Kama Sutra. No pun intended there. The set of 12 quality kitchen knives. So that's where I'm at.
I'm so positive in saying this now because she is never going to listen to this podcast. My niece has moved into her own home. She's had her kitchen done. So I have bought her a set of knives for Christmas.
Fantastic. And you've done the right thing.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, considering it would be really weird if you bought the Kama Sutra. Mega fucking weird. So I'm glad you went for the kitchen knives.
Yeah, that's probably a completely different podcast that I would end up in jail. But
yeah, quite possibly. I'm not sure if you'd end up in jail for buying it. I mean, certainly there'd be frowns, there'd be question marks about it. So I'm glad you went with the knives. Knives isn't like gift.
I mean, to go from my niece to the next thing. But that's freaking swing that I've never noticed in all my watchings of this.
I never noticed either.
So why is there a swing in the kitchen? The only thing I can think of is there is a sex swing in the kitchen.
Well, the thing is, right, I was watching the scene and I was paying attention more than I usually do for obvious reasons. You know, we're doing the podcast. And I kept thinking, it's like, it's supposed to be this like rundown apartment because they got like the old wooden floors and stuff like that. I'm like, this is a nice apartment. I assume it's in New York. Like nowadays, that would cost a lot of money. And because it's kind of like quite bohemian, it made it look surprisingly modern. You know, a lot of everything else looks super 80s, aggressively 80s.
Yeah.
But then you have this moment in their flat where it's like, because again, that kind of quite almost hippie-ish look and like throwback look, I was like, this looks like a relatively modern apartment to me. And as I'm looking around, I was like, oh, that's quite nice. I like, what the fuck is the sweat? And it's the position of it. It's like not even in the living room. No. To have it in the kitchen, to fuck where you eat. It's like they're fucking over the sink. It's all right, let's give them the benefit and say it's not a sex swing. Let's just say it's a swing. That is still absolutely mental to have a swing in the kitchen.
I honestly don't get it. Like the practicality of a swing, sex swing or normal swing.
No, it doesn't matter. It almost makes more sense. Sorry, it almost makes more sense if it is a sex swing. At least then it's got a purpose. It's like, we're down to fuck. We're down, the kitchen's where it's at. This is what we're doing. Fair enough. It's weird as hell, but I can go on that journey. If it's just a swing, what the hell is it doing there? It's the most insane place to put a swing of all time.
Especially now she has 12 sharp knives that will cut through a tin can.
Oh, it's dangerous. It's just adding risk unnecessarily. So yeah, it's very bizarre. But is that bit supposed to be the 70s or late 60s even? Because I know when it goes back, it is like actually to the. I think the Christmas party is late 60s, isn't it?
No, the Christmas party was in 60. Yes, it was 68, wasn't it? So I think that was the 70s. Because it was 6 years later, because they were together. They hadn't seen each other for 15 years. So I think it was 69, because it was a year later. So I think it was 69. Mm-hmm. And then I think maybe it was 2 years later then where he was putting the dog.
Well, I guess the important thing is that they did probably do enough there, rather than, because that is the thing. Usually with Scrooge, he's just a monster. He's just an absolute monster. And then eventually he just gets talked into like, this is the spirit of Christmas, blah, blah, blah. But in this, they do give him a sympathetic side. And, I think it is so important because if Bill Murray is just a jackass of the entire film and then he just turns on a switch at the end, I'm not sure if it works in the same way. But because they keep adding in these little bit, well, this is why he might hate Christmas. This is why he's so jaded. Oh, and by the way, he used to be a pretty good person, but then, he went down a certain route. And again, it fits into, it's not just about Scrooge. It's a critique on American capitalism. Like he totally, at the start, he's into Claire. He's, obviously he's trying to do well in business, but then he totally buys into the whole slippery side of American capitalism. And you see that through, even when he's at the very top, having to deal with, what's his name? John Glover. Does he play Bruce? Is that his name? Bryce, not Bruce, Bryce. And he is so good as playing the absolute slime ball. But don't get me wrong, I work for an asset management firm, and you see this every day. Like these really overly positive slime balls who have got this certain way of like he never says anything bad in the film, but it's just he has this special way of kind of feeding you a shit sandwich and making sure that you're smiling about it as you choke it down. So it's like that's his special skill, and he pulls it off so well in this film.
So there's two things, isn't there? I mean, it's not just Bryce, is it? It's Bryce Cummings. Like that name all over is just ridiculous. And when he first gets,
it's like the haircuts.
When he comes to lunch, Bill Murray thinks he's the ghost of Christmas past.
He thinks
he's the first ghost. And
if you want to know how dark this is, that scene, Jesus wept.
He sees that guy on fire. He chucks water on him, and his line was completely ad-libbed where he goes, "I'm sorry, I thought you were Richard Pryor." And
that is dark as fuck.
And I googled why Because again, watching it with a podcaster's eye, just
well, I knew from before because I'm a big fan of Richard Pryor. But
for those who don't know why he said, "I thought you were Richard Pryor," there's a story where Richard Pryor got wasted, set himself on fire, and ran down the street.
Cocaine.
Freebasing cocaine. Set himself on fire and ran down a street on fire. So,
and do you know what makes that story even darker? Is that Richard Donner, the director of this film, actually worked with Richard Pryor on the toy and just left it in. It's like, that's the kind of film it is. We're making fun of the fact Richard Pryor set himself on fire in this supposedly Christmas family-friendly movie. It is bonkers. It is bonkers. And of course, there's not many Christmas films where you actually see a man on fire. That doesn't happen very often.
No. So you mentioned Richard Donner. We have to say welcome back to one of Richard Donner's favourite people to appear in a film, Mary Ellen Trainor.
Oh, she shows up in all of them. It's crazy.
Yeah. But she's back again because we mentioned
the sweetheart of 80s cinema.
She started off in The Goonies with us, in Die Hard, a couple of other films that we've done, and she disappeared for a while for us. But she's back now, full effect, and she'll be back again. One of the Christmas episodes that we're going to do further on. She'll be back again.
Yeah. Well, it is weird because, like you said, there was like a little spell when it just seemed like she showed up in every single film that we did.
Yeah,
and we've had a little break, but now she's back. Like she doesn't come back for one episode; she comes back for 3. So it feels like we're doing kind of like special episodes, like built around her kind of brief appeal, and they are always brief. And this is a very brief moment. Is it literally just the start of the film, just in the boardroom?
No, she appears at the end, but non-speaking at the end as well. He says about get me champagne. Don't send where I send people. Send where you send me. And he's talking to it first, but then the camera pans to her. So, so she showed up for us. She showed up for us in The Goonies. She showed up for us in Monster Squad, in Die Hard. She's now in Scrooged. Yeah, she keeps rocking her. Good old Mary Ellen Trainor.
Yeah, she is ace. She is ace. But yeah, as I was saying, like one of the things about this film is, and I'm not sure if it gets enough of a mention, just how incredibly meta the narrative actually is. Like there was one point in the film where it's so meta because obviously they're filming Scrooge while the events of A Christmas Carol are actually happening to him. But he never mentions the fact that he's aware that he's basically in the plot of the movie that he's filming for his studio. And at one point I was like, wait a minute, is he actually having a mental breakdown? I was like, is he actually, was it really the effects of Russian vodka poisoned by Chernobyl? I was like, is he having a breakdown? But right at the end of the film, he mentions the fact that he knows the answer to the SS Minnow question, where obviously it was like the ghost of Christmas presents, and he sits in on his brother and all their friends having the quiz and stuff. So that suggests obviously that it did happen. But I find it bizarre that at no point does he mention the fact that, I'm clearly living out the plot of A Christmas Carol while bizarrely filming it at the same time. That doesn't seem to be weird to him. But at the same time, he does appear to know. He's like, there's going to be other ghosts. I know the deal kind of thing. So it's a really strange mix where they've like, are we going to bring this up? Are we going to mention? Well, are we going to have Frank mention this, that he's essentially Scrooge? And he does say bar humbug in the film, but no.
But they kind of do, don't they? They hinted it. For the third ghost, when he goes in the lift, he goes in the lift, and as it opens, he sees the ghost of Christmas Future, and he shits himself because he thinks that's his ghost. So he is hinting, he knows what's coming next because
that's what I mean. He seems to know the structure, but he never mentions the fact that he's.
Who's he going to mention it to? I mean, they clearly think he's insane from the Richard Pryor comment already running out. Who's he going to mention to? Oh, by the way, this is happening to me.
I just thought maybe even the ghosts. I just thought maybe to somebody he would go, well, this is bizarre that I'm living out the or maybe he has that whole breakdown moment when Marley shows up, as I mentioned, the Russian vodka quotes, and he's saying, this is obviously me just having a breakdown. I'm filming Scrooge, and now this is and then ghosts start showing up. Like, what the fuck? It's just bizarre. Like the fact that you get the whole film running twice concurrently. It's like, there's the film we're filming, and this is the actual film. But yeah, again, I think they do it incredibly smartly in this film. And the one thing I keep coming back to is the fact that because it's A Christmas Carol, maybe because it's a Bill Murray film, it allows him to get away with so much. And in this film in particular, I think one of the most important things about A Christmas Carol, because obviously this film does it quite differently with the whole meta aspect and really lean into, kind of the capitalism angle and 80s Americana, whatnot. But fundamentally, for it to work, you still need to get the ghost right. And I think that's where a lot of these films fall down. You mentioned at the start about Robert Zemeckis' version of Christmas Carol. And I was so looking forward to that because I do like Robert Zemeckis. I thought, what's his name? Oh my God. Jim Carrey. I thought he was brilliant. I mean, he really went on the nose with his impression of the original. But the one thing that film didn't really know was the ghosts. Especially that weird little, I'm not sure if he was Irish, the little flame thing, that really got up my back. But in this film, like, the ghosts are all amazing. Yeah. Every single ghost is fantastic. Like right from the first, it was
Lou.
Lou. Who's obviously playing essentially Marley. But he's disturbing. Like, if you were a kid watching that, and again, it comes back to the idea that in the 80s, they just let shit slide. There was there was no PG-13 or anything. So it's just like, we're not going to give this a 15. We're just going to make it a PG. And it's like, a mouse climbs out the back of his head. He looks like a proper ghoul. It's not like, he's just got a couple of chains on him. He's decomposed a lot.
So the golf ball pops out of the back of his head. So it's hinting like he got killed by taking a shot to the back of the head. But he just had a heart attack on like the 19th green or whatever.
Yeah. I think it was just like, it looks cool. That's it.
He makes one of the best lines when he's like, and it's a shit drink, but he says, I don't care what you do to me, but don't take it out on the Bacardi.
See, my favorite line was he's like, I was a captain of industry, adored by women. Oh, come on. You paid for the women, Lou. That was a great line.
You mentioned the Russian vodka as well. I wanted to say, Bill Murray does one of the best things ever is when he makes himself a post-ghost drink, where it's all Russian vodka, and the way he just shakes the tab in, the tab cola.
Yeah. And again, another nod.
It doesn't make me wonder. It brings it back to that's my drinking night.
Yeah.
You start off, because I drink like whiskey and Coke or rum and Coke or wherever it is. You start off and you're doing it fine, but after you're getting halfway through the bottle, your measures, as my friends say, drunk Rob's measurements get a bit.
Your measurements are a fucking disgrace. I've never seen anything like it. The way you pour liquor into those glasses by the end of the night is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, by the end of the night, Rob is essentially showing a glass full of, spirits, a picture of a can of Coke. Like I'm not even sure the Coke goes in there. It's just, he's telling stories of what Coke is to just a full glass of spirits.
I remember ridiculous. When you showed up late a couple of years ago and we'd already been on it for a good couple of hours. So we said, do you want to catch up? Should we pour you a drink? And we poured you a whiskey and Coke, and you took one swig of it and went, I'll stick to beer.
I mean, it was just so, to open with that, Jesus, I don't mind a stiff drink, as it were, but to show up a few hours later and be like, here's basically a full glass of whiskey. It's like, come on, man. Jesus Christ, this is topped up, to say the least. But
I love that. But no, it's you're going on about the other ghosts, but I love the way he pours himself a drink when he's just, again, it's part of that whole, maybe he is having just a complete meltdown.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, if it wasn't for that one line at the end, at one point, I was like, well, maybe he is just having a total mental breakdown. But what I took away from that scene, funny enough, was the complete opposite. I was just like, man, this film's so fucking 80s. Like, Tab is so 80s. Tab is a super 80s drink. Like, right from the off, when you have like Lee Majors and The Night the Reindeer Died, Bob Goulet's Cajun Christmas, which I actually thought was brilliant, and Father Loves Beaver, another stalwart of 80s TV. Just on that, very quickly, Father Loves Beaver. What is the joke there? Or is it just the mum saying, your dad's cheating on me, and that's it? Am I missing something?
There was an 80s TV show, wasn't it, called Leave It to Beaver, where the kid was named Beaver. So I think it's a piss take of that, where he's out chasing Beaver, so the kid's name is Beaver. But again, it's going to this whole sexual side of it, where father does love Beaver.
Yeah, well, I wasn't getting the joke. I was like, wait, what? Is this a play on words or something? I was like, or is she just kind of like going, your dad loves shagging women? It's like, Jesus Christ, you love chasing the skirt, your dad. Fair enough. But yeah, this is aggressively 80s all the way throughout. And that's what I took for, Tab is the 80s drink as far as, up there with Baby Sham in my head. I just think of Baby Sham as being a very 80s drink. I don't think that survived beyond 1989. But in terms of, as I was saying about the ghost, I think, as I said, Lou Hayward basically playing Marley is fantastic. David Johansen as the Ghost of Christmas Past, I think absolutely knocks out of the park. And obviously, you know, it has your emotional moments, you know, Niagara Falls, Frankie Baby and all that jazz. Carol Kane as the Ghost of Christmas Present really might not have worked because she is swinging for the fences in both a literal and figurative sense.
I think she's great.
I think she's great.
Yeah.
I think she's great. And the vibe, like to go for like a proper Three Stooges kind of shtick between the two of them, where, you know, he clearly wants to strangle this woman. Again, it kind of works. Like her voice should be annoying, but I think she just takes it up to the line, and instead it just comes across as memorable. But I really think like
I said it at the beginning, my quote at the beginning, where it was just because they're kicking the shit out of each other, and he's like, "Oh my god, bitch, hit me with a toaster!" Like she just, she just, oh, let's not fight, Frank. Let's not fight. Oh, look, a nice little toaster, and just smacks him clearly in the face with it.
Yeah. It is. It kind of falls into the same kind of realm at that point as your kind of Home Alone, as we mentioned last week. But those kind of injuries where you're just like, oh, it's a bit of fun because they're having their ghostly kind of back and forth. Yeah. You know, it briefly becomes a Three Stooges movie. Because if somebody smashes you in the face with a toaster, it's going to fuck your face up.
But that's fun, and we're laughing. That's not fun for him, obviously, but we're laughing at this. And then within a quick shot, it's he got hit in the face with a toaster. Ha ha! Oh crap! That guy's dead. That guy's frozen solid.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's a very different film if she smashes him in the face with a toaster and she breaks his nose and he has to go to the hospital. It doesn't really work. But it does. Yeah, as you said, the tone does shift pretty quickly then to the whole, you know, and I think it has to, because of course it's a comedy, but you need him to turn the corner. And the whole point is that's where the Ghost of Christmas Future comes in. Yeah. And of course, I think, you know, the Ghost of Christmas Future, it has that kind of quick payoff, as you already mentioned, where he gets into the lift. It's actually the Ghost of Christmas Future from the film that they're filming, who isn't very scary. He thinks it's him. It's like, oh, he calms down. But then when the actual ghost comes in, it's pretty imposing. I mean, when he opens his kind of gown, and it's very kind of Muppets-esque going on in there, for lack of a better word, I think that's kind of weird. But that whole sequence at the end,
Christmas Future, isn't it?
Is that?
Yeah. Well, so when
I thought it's just death, basically.
So after he's poured himself that insane drink, just before Elliot Loudermilk shows up, and we will go into Elliot Loudermilk, but just before he shows up, the Ghost of Christmas Future appears on his multiple TV screens from the live show that they're doing. But then another ghost appears in the corner, but that ghost has a skull face. But when you see the Ghost of Christmas Future in the lift, he's got a TV face.
Yeah, but I think he just has that power to move around. I would still say that's ostensibly the same character. I would give him the benefit and just say for the scene.
I'm saying it's the same character. What I'm saying is he is changing from, like, you see him with a face in the hand, and then separately, then you see him as this giant TV screen with a rib cage full of ghouls.
The
better thing,
ghoulies, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I mean, that does lean into one of the I think the darkest moment in the film. Of course, there's like, you know, dark jokes earlier and stuff like that, and the guy's on fire, blah, blah, blah. But the end in particular, when the Ghost of Christmas Future shows up, and he is quite imposing, you know, they've gone for like a, you know, legitimately scary character there. If it goes full on Terry Gilliam at that point, like the style of the film completely changes. Like it goes so incredibly stylized. Like, excuse me. It also reminds me of something like, you know, The Time Bandits, you know, 12 Monkeys, all these things. When it's like, you know, it goes to the scene with Claire, with like the poor kids.
Yeah.
And I know it's supposed to be a kind of dream sequence, what could be. But at that point, it really swings to the fences. It's like everything else is kind of like, yes, there's ghosts and stuff, but it's kept it, quote unquote, relatively grounded, I suppose.
And it's
but then all of a sudden for this like final scene, like, you know, it's everything suggests it's supposed to be a few years into the future. But the way they filmed this suggests it's kind of 30 years into some kind of weird dystopian future. It's really bizarre, really bizarre.
Because it's meant to be with Claire, it's like snow falling around on the kids outside, but it feels randomly like ash. Like it's
Well,
it's like ash.
They abandon any links to the real world, and she's wearing ridiculous makeup.
Yeah,
and you know when the secretary goes to see her son at what's supposed to be obviously
Grace, who is played perfectly by Alfred Woodward. She is fantastic.
Oh, she's brilliant. Yeah. She almost steals the film sometimes. Yeah. She's brilliant in every scene she's in. But yeah, as I said, it was really bizarre ending to the film in that regard. And again, like usually you just see the kind of the body buried, like the tombstone. You see that kind of thing. Go, oh no, it's me, I'm dead. But they have the whole thing where he's buried alive and his feet are on fire. Oh my God, he's like, don't burn me, don't burn me. I'm like, oh my God, this is so fucked up.
He's holding on to the side and he's like, Jimmy, don't let him burn me. And the tears in his eyes, it's insane. But again, and that's when it changes. And it does give you heart, but it just becomes dark and you're just like, oh, fucking, like, all right, if this doesn't make him change his tune, nothing will at that point.
Well, the thing is, though, that does play into the whole manic, like, his approach at the end when he realizes it's not just, oh, I'm not going to die in the future. He's like, oh my God, I thought I was burning to death inside of a coffin 20 seconds ago, and now all of a sudden I've been given this second chance. So no wonder he's quite manic, and he is absolutely manic at the end of the film. And that scene in particular, and we've already mentioned Goldthwait, what's his name? Bobcat Goldthwait. Ridiculous name. All of a sudden, for that brief 15 minutes, it feels like they're in the same film. Because before that, Bobcat Goldthwait is basically, I don't know what he's up to in this film. I know some people probably like him. I think he's got it turned up to 11, and he's my least favorite part of this film. He is this movie's gutter boy. That's what he is. 100%.
Bobcat Goldthwait doing what only Bobcat Goldthwait can do, and we're going to keep saying his full name. We just can't call him Bobcat.
So, you're going to bring up a lunatic if you call your son Bobcat Goldthwait. He's not going to be a fucking lawyer, is he? It's like, thank God he was an actor. Otherwise, Jesus Christ, what would he be? It was either be an actor or join the circus. Those were his only two options.
He's Robert Francis Goldthwait, but professional name Bobcat Goldthwait. But like only he could be. I'd love again. It goes back to Gutter Boy. Because I love, I must be easy in these films because I love the little noises that he makes. Whilst, same with Gutter Boy. Yeah, it's like when he, like what is it? I'm hunting rabbits. He goes, and he just, it makes me laugh.
Yeah, well, that is the thing. He's going full Looney Tunes, of course. Yeah. But even the way he pulls a face, like when he's like kind of being fired. And he's trying to drink out of that brown paper bag, the classic kind of like when everything's fucked up, you're on your last legs when you're drinking like liquor out of a brown paper bag. And every time he goes to sip it, he pulls this fucking face. And I'm just like, all I want to do is punch him. And I should have sympathy for his character, Elliot, because obviously he's been fired on Christmas Eve. Yeah. But instead, I'm just like, no, he's a dick. He's a dick. He just does everything he's got going for him. And let's be clear, he's like, oh, my wife's going to leave me. No wonder. Your marriage was hanging onto a thread. You are unbearable.
Can I just go? So I want to say the one thing I can't believe in this entire film is how quick she must have been ready to leave him. Because he gets fired. He gets fired. He goes home to tell his wife. She leaves him. She's got an exit plan already because she's taken the kid. She's left him. He's already lost his apartment. Do you know what I mean?
Like they were that's what I mean. He's such a bellend that his wife is just looking for an excuse to leave him. They're looking for an excuse to kick him out of the apartment and finally he gets fired but it's like, can we do this to him on Christmas Eve? Yeah, Elliot's the fucking worst. I am out. I've been waiting for this opportunity. I am leaving. God. So yeah, I'm on board with pretty much everyone else in this film. And the only reason he gets a reprieve at the end is because Bill Murray has lost his fucking mind because he thought he was going to get burnt alive.
The wife knew, didn't she? The wife knew. The wife was like, oh, I knew you were going to get fired at some point. Do you remember that thing I had you sign? Well, it wasn't a permission slip. No. What it is you're gone, mate. Like, off you go. You're done. Bye-bye, Bobcat Goldthwait. Like, you're
I make no mistake. He's got nothing. Like, these are the last of his problems now. Because despite what Frank is saying about, oh, do you want, you're going to get a pay rise, you got your job back, Elliot's going to jail.
Yeah, Elliot's basically going to jail after this because he takes a production truck hostage with a double-barreled shotgun. It's insane.
Yeah, he's not getting away with that just because Frank Cross has given an inspirational speech down on the floor in front of the TV. Everyone's like, oh, well, it was a lovely speech. But at the end of the day, he wasn't like, one of those polite ones. He shot the barrel, like, shots were fired. People were clearly scared for their lives. He's already got previous. He is going to jail. He's clearly not going to get any support from his family. He is finished. And it's not just him. The woman, and I'm not sure if she works on the production team or anything, who basically sexually abuses Bryce Cummings at the end. He is tied up in the corner and out of the blue, suddenly decides, I want a piece of that. I mean, maybe the only thing I can say to her benefit.
She's censorship woman, isn't she?
The censorship room, yeah. The only thing I can think is that because of what happened earlier, she's suffering from a concussion. That is the only thing that's going to work in a court of law, because he is tied up. And what does she rape him in the middle of that room while everyone else is being held at gunpoint? Again, you speak to like the bizarre moments in this film. I don't think anything's crazier than her jumping on him and having her way with him, despite the fact that he's tied up. Right. Imagine that scene, but the other way around.
There is one thing crazier than that.
What's that? The sex swing.
Aside from Elliot saying one of the best lines in the film, which is that was an innocent window, and you saw what I did to that. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, that was pretty good, yeah.
Was making party, and the one woman decides, this guy's got a gun held to us. He's going to make us party like we're having fun. So she decides to do the funky chicken dance while she sat up.
I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in this film right at the end.
Honestly, it's ridiculous. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, she 100% molested Bryce Cummings.
She did. But the thing is, it does wear its darkness on its sleeve. I mean, it's right from that like early scene. Well, of course, you get the opening sequence first. Like, if you go right back to the start of the film, we are jumping around like absolute lunatics here. But my first issue with the film is that, yes, it's very 80s, but because you've got a Danny Elfman score and they're doing an overhead shot, like, I cannot shift the idea that this bit, like, it feels so much like a Tim Burton film at the start. It feels so much, you know, you think of like that overhead shot, you immediately go to Beetlejuice, the way it goes over the town. It's going over it's a set, it's snowy. You're like, well, for one, this looks like a Tim Burton shot. Then you've got Danny Elfman playing over the top. You're like, is this a Tim Burton film? And am I going insane? But beyond that kind of weird opening sequence, straight into the boardroom, you have, you know, Frank Cross's idea of what a Christmas film could be. And when I was younger, I always thought it was ridiculous. So, you know, it was like, sorry, I've got this written down. Drug addiction, acid rain, international terrorism. And then the last one, freeway killers. Like, that's always been a major issue. With the argument being, of course, because I was always quite confused when I was younger. I was like, what's this got to do with Scrooge? But I was like, no, that's not what he's going for. He's saying, the world's fucked up. Watch Scrooge. That's nice. You like Scrooge. And suddenly I'm like, wait a minute. The world's fucked up enough now that might work. Like, if you just replace those with global warming, social media, global pandemics, religious extremism, watch Scrooge, you might be like, dude, I'm going to watch Scrooge. Like, that is exactly the kind of advert that would work on me. Everything's fucked, but Scrooge is nice. Watch Scrooge.
You missed one of that then. What did you say? Global pandemic?
Global warming, social media is just being the worst. Global pandemics, religious extremism. But of course, there's plenty to choose from in 2021.
Lack of toilet paper.
Lack of toilet paper. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah, there's no toilet paper. Watch Scrooge. Feel better. Like, yeah. Honestly, it's an extreme approach to advertising. But in this day and age, the way things are going, I'm like, you know, Jesus Christ, that might work. Just remind you of how everything's shit, and then just say, oh, but this is cool. Watch this. I'm like, yeah. I'm honestly, it happens to me every week now. I get to the end of the week, I'm like, I might just watch The Muppets Christmas Carol or a fucking animated film. It's why I've stopped reading. Like, I haven't read nearly as many books. Too many of it depressing. I'm just like, I haven't got the mental strength for it anymore. Especially Stephen King novels. They're all about the end of the world. Yeah. I could have stopped to that.
His excitement when he finds out that the old woman died because she watched his trailer. Yeah. And then when Grace is on the 1980s battery carry over your shoulder phone, and she's like, oh,
fantastic,
the news is on the line, they want you to say something, and he says something about the fact that she probably just had I can't remember what he said, and then Grace is about to say it verbatim, and he grabs the phone off her and just
the way he like waves his fist, like,
waves his fist, and yeah, that's never going to happen in 2021. Do not wave your fist at anyone, mate, because that's never going to happen. But
well, I just thought it was a great scene. Like he says that's like, don't say that. Like, how many times you do that where you just like wave, like, oh, I could kill you. I can kill you.
You know, Grace has these little dig things. Like, she is the long-suffering.
Oh yeah. She has to have a moment.
So she is like, oh, I'm going to get him any way I can. So she has these little digs every now and then. She knew what she was doing. She's like, oh yeah, so he said this, I'm going to repeat it verbatim. And he's like, oh fuck, don't do that.
She's on the wrong side of history with the gifts, though, because in 2021, when you look back, it's like, what would you prefer, a VHS player or a bath towel? I'm like, I'll probably have a bath towel nowadays, in fairness.
Although, yeah, 2021, if you look at it now, though, when was it, 88? And DVD came in what, 97, didn't actually take effect until the early 2000s. VHS player would be right for you in the 80s.
Oh, don't get me wrong, in 1988, it's a dream gift, no doubt about it. It's top of the range. Like, I didn't have a VHS player until, I think, 1991. If somebody had bought me a VHS player for Christmas in 1988, I would have lost my fucking mind.
I do know.
You know, as an adult in 2021, I'd probably prefer to, the bathtub. There's some things in this film that extend, they're never going to age as well as others. Especially his boss. Is it?
Sorry, I was just wanting to still talk about the VHS player before you move on.
Oh, sorry, no, Karen.
The size of it, like the last VHS player I remember having was tiny, but the actual size of the VHS player that guy had, or that his brother had, the box was massive. It was like the size of a flat screen TV that we would have now. But I used to have a massive VHS player. Like the first VHS player we had was absolutely ginormous. It was absolutely ridiculous. I had 2 VHS players, scat leaded up. You play one, you record the other.
Yeah, like when I think of like VHS, obviously I had the mass when I was younger, but it's like my wife Bethan, it's like she always had one of those like little 14-inch TVs with like a VHS attached to the bottom. But for years after, it was like still popular. It's like, well, Bethan, in fairness, she had like an iPod until like 2020. God bless her. She hangs on. She gets very attached to technology. It's why we end up with the same car for 10 years. As soon as she names one of our cars, it's like, okay, well, we're keeping this car for a decade now, no doubt. Well, she was like, well, I'm keeping my mini TV with a VHS in the bottom until it falls to pieces. And thank God it finally did. If
it works for her, it works for her. I cleaned my mum's attic out about 2 months ago and finally got rid of all the VHSs my mum was storing up there, even though she doesn't have any VHS players anymore. It's just
I find it hard to throw mine out. Like back at my mum's place, I've still got VHSs. And funny enough, it was like when I went back for Christmas, I had like, just because obviously, I don't live down there anymore. It was like an old kind of tubes TV kind of thing. And I still had the VHS player from when I was younger. Not a giant one, but it was still a VHS player. And I was like, I still have some pretty cool VHSs. And for a couple of Christmases, if I was at my room, that's what I used to watch. I was like, I'm going to put on like the Rambo trilogy or Star Wars. Just those kind of, you had like nice box sets you almost like loath to try out. But it did finally last year, it bit the dust. I put in a VHS. I was like, okay, it's no longer working. And I don't think I'm going to go out my way to get this fixed. But yeah, as I say, it's one of those things that ages the film. Like you see a VHS player, like fair enough. But the one thing that really ages this film is his boss, Robert Mitchum playing, is it Preston Rhinelander?
Yeah.
Is that his name, his boss?
Yeah.
When he kicks the cat. When he's really upset at the end of the film. And I'm just like, that's one of those weird things. Like, obviously they're just playing it for jokes, but in 2021, I don't think that happens. I don't think anybody, like in a family film, they're like, dude, you can't kick the cat. You cannot kick the cat. So you can't see the cat. It's just, suggested that I kick cat. So yeah, dude, it's not happening. It's not worth the fret, not worth the fuss. People kick off. What those cat people get like? Just leave it.
As a cat lover, obviously not good for you. I was all right with it.
yeah. Well, if you're not a fan of cats, I can totally understand that.
With it.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm fine with it. It's as much as I love cats, it's a movie, but you know how weird some people get.
Oh yeah,
it's a sensitive time nowadays. But
I will say my name is Liam. Mind if anyone doesn't like that, my name's Liam.
Oh, right, okay.
Like that, I'm alright with the cat. Yeah.
Although speaking of Robert Mitchum as Preston Rhinelander, I must be making this up, but there's a scene earlier in the film when he's speaking to Frank Cross. And they're talking about, funny enough, cats and dogs and cats watching television. And they're both, the camera's there, they're both standing next to each other. And I think they've either both or one of them's got a magazine. And the side of the magazine facing the camera looks like Eric Roberts in just his underwear. Like, I'm not sure, you should go back and watch it. Because I was staring at it, I was like, dude, that looks like Eric Roberts, to the point where I went online. I was like, is that a picture of Eric Roberts in his underwear in that magazine? Like a full page ad. And I couldn't find anything, so maybe it's me just making it up. But in 1988, Eric Roberts still pretty hot right then. His career was still going. I think he's probably still bigger than Julia at that point, unless Pretty Woman had come out. But
88, 88, he's probably doing Best of the Best at that time, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if I can judge that because as much as I love Best of the Best, I'm not sure if the rest of the world agrees with me, to be honest.
What about Best of the Best 2, Best of the Best 3, No Turning Back?
Let's just leave it there. Although we do absolutely need to do Best of the Best on this podcast, 100%. Just one last thing for me before we move on. speaking of things which like just odd things in this film, Frank Cross's personal bathroom in the office building with his own quote on the wall, "Cross, something you nail people to," was such a bizarre choice. Like I know he's doing well, fair enough, but to have like that bathroom / gym to himself, and then to have that super dark quote like connected to his name on the wall, I was like, all right, dude, we get it. He's a dickhead. But I was like, even that I thought was oddly taking it pretty far.
Well, it's everything, isn't it? It's all about him. It's when he opens up the drawer at the beginning of in the boardroom scene, and he looks down, and he's basically just seeing his, so he can show his smiling face, so he doesn't show it to anyone else. Like he looks down, he the mirror, closes it, and it's all just to be like an asshole. Basically, that's it. It is everything just to be a prick to everyone else.
Yeah, and he is a dick, but he has so many great lines. Like you say, the people around him are all assholes. Like for the most part, it's like, now I have to kill you all, and you're like, yeah, you do. They're all horrible people, just like you. They're all kind of like sucking up.
Yeah, but again, Elliot Loudermilk wasn't. Elliot Loudermilk was like, it's not the spirit of Christmas.
No. He's the worst because he's fundamentally trying to be a good person, but he's an absolutely insufferable bellend. Like he's just the worst. He's the other end. If anything, I would become more evil being around him. I'm just, I can't deal with you. You're just a piece of shit. I don't care if he's saying all these positive things.
You are so mean.
Dude, well, what about his wife? What about the person, who's renting the apartment? This isn't by chance. Everyone feels the same way.
Dude, his wife, I told you.
And how quickly,
his wife had
I know he got fired, but how quickly he comes into work with a shotgun. And let's be clear, he's coming there to kill Frank Cross. Yeah. Like, he's shooting that shotgun. He's not just waving it around, pretending. He is trying to kill him. Best case scenario, he's like torturing him beforehand by like playing with him. Like he appears to be, like his aim appears to be, okay, I'm going to go into the office and I'm going to put 2 shells through Frank Cross's chest.
My question is, how deep is his shirt pocket? Because he has a lot of shotgun shells in that shirt pocket.
He does. And again, that kind of, means it's the idea that he's not there to mess around. He's like, oh, if I miss, I'm going to make sure I've got more shells. He hasn't just picked up the shotgun and just thought, okay, I'm going to go in and scare him. I'm taking 8 shells. And you know what? I start thinking the dark side. Say if he kills Frank Cross with the first 2 shots, do you think he just walks out? I'm like, he probably kills someone else on the way out. Then I reckon he tops himself. I think he had a very dark approach. If it wasn't for the fact that Bill Murray totally, both literally and figuratively, disarmed him when he came back, apparently from the dead, I think there's a lot of blood spilled that day.
I'm not too sure. I got a feeling he's taken Frank Cross down, so that happy days, and then he's eating the barrel himself. I got a feeling it's suicide. I don't think he's taking anyone else out because.
Okay. That's best case. That's best case scenario. Best case scenario is a murder suicide. Jesus Christ! And you're defending this animal.
Answer me this, right? How did he get to the 20th floor with a shotgun? Shotgun.
Yeah, for a guy who's just been thrown out, who looks, let's be clear, like an absolute mess. Like he's an absolute state. It's not like he walks in and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's Elliot. This is fine. This is a homeless guy essentially walking back into the office. It'd be bad enough in the first instance if you saw someone in that state, you'd be like, well, you can't come in. But also, security's just thrown him out, and now he walks in. Or maybe there's a deleted scene where he comes in, offs the 2 security guys. Nobody's but then surely someone's going to have noticed. I'm just going to say they're incompetent, and if it wasn't for the fact that he totally disarms him, then it's a murder suicide. So again, just plays into the whole idea that Elliot really is the monster of the skull.
Again, his transition to homeless person from being fired
so quick
is magical.
It's unbelievable.
It is.
Well, you see the difference between, if you're comparing him to Frank, you've got like people who want him to change. Obviously Claire, she sees the good in him. Obviously Elliot's wife and Homer, they don't see the good in him. They're like, we want him out immediately. This has just been the excuse we're waiting for.
Damn it, Liam, I see the good in him. I see the good in Elliot Loudermilk.
Well, you're the only person, so yeah, we'll leave it with that. The split. Let the fans decide. Is Elliot the true monster of this film? I think he might be.
Elliot and Gutter Boy from The Wraith are in my Mount Rushmore.
And the thing is, you keep bringing it up. You like these characters because these horrendous noises they make. It's ridiculous. It's the exact reason I hate these goddamn characters. All right, we've got to move on. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. We'll be here all day.
I absolutely love it. You're killing me.
Do you have any facts? Do you have any facts about why Elliot is such a good guy? Or
I actually no, I have no facts about Elliot. I don't believe.
Okay, fair enough.
My usual caveat with these facts is so many to choose from. I haven't got them all.
No, yeah. You could go on for days.
So this was one that actually surprised me. Bill Murray and director Richard Donner reportedly did not enjoy working together, creating a lot of tension on set. When asked by film critic Roger Ebert if he had any disagreements with Donner, Murray replied, "Only a few, every single minute of the day. That could have been really, really great movie. The script was so good. There's maybe one take in the final cut movie that is mine. We made it so fast, it was like doing a movie live. He kept telling me to do things louder, louder, louder. I think he was deaf." Like, I've never heard before that they didn't get on in this film.
No, or me. And it seems like such a kind of quintessential Bill Murray performance.
Yeah.
That it doesn't feel like he's acting against type. But maybe it was like, this is him in that kind of weird stage of his career, isn't it? Where he's trying to go legit or whatever. He's trying. What's the name of the film? Like, he's recently done Ghostbusters, and now all of a sudden it's like he wants to do The Razor's Edge. It was in '84, I think, around the same time. So obviously that's come out, that flopped, and I wonder, it's like almost feels like this is him giving in, because this was, and the way they actually presented it and sold the film was very linked to Ghostbusters. Like, on the tagline, it's like, in Bill Murray's first comedy since Ghostbusters. Or, Bill Murray's amongst the ghosts again, only this time it's 3 against 1. And I wonder if part of him is just like, he wanted to be that serious actor. It just didn't really work out, and he's had to go back to his wheelhouse. Well, but to me, this still feels like that quintessential first half of Bill Murray's career performance. When you think of Ghostbusters, you think of this. You think of Groundhog Day, that kind of slightly more manic, darker version of Bill Murray before he got to Lost in Translation and obviously all the Wes Anderson stuff, and it became more introspective and a bit quieter. But yeah, I don't see this film and think, he is Bill Murray not being Bill Murray. This totally feels like Bill Murray totally being Bill Murray.
But that's it as well. I mean, you said a lot in that then, but the gist of it was... This was Bill Murray.
My wife often says the same thing. She's like, yeah, you said a lot then, Liam. Jesus Christ.
So this was Bill Murray's first starring role since Ghostbusters. He had been living in Paris and seriously considered giving up acting altogether. So this was the film that got him to star again. And you can see it as well, because like you said, then he did The Razor's Edge. He had a bit part in Little Shop of Horrors in '86. So he did Ghostbusters in '84. He did this in '88. And then he did Ghostbusters 2 in '89. Yeah. These were his starring roles. So it's you can definitely see it kind of pushed him back doing the
and plus you've got to remember as well, this is a time in his career where and I'm not sure if the same is true nowadays, but he was famously quite combative, wasn't he? I mean, we talked about this on the Groundhog Day podcast, where he didn't obviously get on with Harold Ramis and had a huge impact on their friendship. And it's like, when I hear... I'm of the mindset now, whenever I hear, I was like, Richard Donner and Bill Murray didn't get on, I'm like, that's probably Bill Murray being a dick more than Richard Donner. If I'd heard loads of stories about Richard Donner being impossible to work with, maybe. But again, you get the idea. It's like, if you're an artist, whatever, and he has this idea of the way the film's going to go, and maybe Richard Donner has maybe the kind of broader appeal approach. And to be honest, maybe it did need someone like Richard Donner to bring it in, because as we've already mentioned, this really does go to some pretty dark places. And to make it work as a family, quote-unquote, family-friendly Christmas film, you did need to rein it in sometimes. You did need to pull it from the edge. So perhaps if Bill Murray had its way, it could have potentially tipped over, into just, it's not really viable as a mainstream movie. Because as dark as it is, despite all these weird jokes, it totally is viable as a mainstream Christmas movie, but it only just gets under the line,
In regards to if Richard Donner was a dick or not, my next quote, filming began in December 1987 with Christmas approaching. Director Richard Donner asked if the production could have Christmas Day off, but Paramount Pictures executives refused, insisting the filming should continue on Christmas Day. However, Donner outwitted them. At the end of the day on Christmas Eve 1987, he officially fired the entire cast and crew. 2 days later, on December the 26th, he officially rehired everyone. The break allowed the cast and crew members to spend Christmas with their families. That's clever.
Well, he's clearly a sweetheart. He's clearly a sweetheart. Yeah, so that leans very heavily into the idea that Bill Murray might be the bad guy in this one.
This again, right? So they had the film during Christmas, and then Richard Donner fired everyone. The next one, then, when the Ghost of Christmas Present, Carol Kane, grabbed Bill Murray's lip, she tore it so badly that filming was halted for several days. So they wouldn't give everybody Christmas Day off, but like filming was stopped for several days because Bill Murray's lip was ripped.
Well, that was, as I was watching that scene, I was like, Bill Murray's famously quite kind of antsy on film sets and stuff. Yeah. And I was like, she really does pull his lip. And it was the first time I ever really noticed it when I was watching this time. I was like, God, she's grabbing his face aggressively there. I was like, I wonder if Bill Murray afterwards was like, what the fuck? Or if he was like, well, it's in the scene, we're just going with it. But obviously she's injured his face.
Have you ever?
And it's such a weird injury. I don't want to go pulling my lip now because I won't be able to speak at the same time. But I can only imagine it'd be a very unpleasant injury if something pulled your bottom lip.
There's a little connection, isn't it, between your gum and the lip? There's a little...
That's at the top, though. Mine, actually, I don't even know how I did it, but mine is cut, like that bit in between the top of my gum and my lip at the front. And it happened when I was like 11 years old. It doesn't heal. It's one of the weird part of your bites. So I've just got this weird flappy bit of skin at the top of my mouth, which is very gross. And I almost wish I hadn't shared that with everyone now. But hey-ho, it is what it is. So I can understand why you might not want your lip pulled from your fucking face. So yeah,
I appreciate that.
Goes for it. Very brave of her to do that to Bill Murray.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate he's the star. But they halted filming for several days, but they wouldn't let anyone else have Christmas off. One day.
Also, it's such a bullshit injury. It's like, we had to shut down Mission Impossible for 7 days because, Tom Cruise was jumping from one building to another and broke his ankle. Or we had to shut down Scrooged for 7 days because somebody pulled on Bill Murray's lip a little bit too hard. It's like, oh, God, that sounds a bit shit.
Don't get me started on Tom Cruise. Shouldn't be doing that shit anyway because he's taking money away from other people. But...
oh my God, that is a different conversation and one I will be disagreeing with you strongly on. But that's another podcast.
I can't stand him.
I love Tom Cruise.
Moving swiftly on, Bill Murray falling on his way out of the restaurant was unscripted and a genuine accident, as evidenced by the reaction of the actor playing the waiter and Murray's feet as he falls. Apparently, it was due to the stairs still being wet after splashing the waiter with water that caused him to lose his footing. After all of Bill Murray's acting brothers, John Murray, Joel Murray, and Brian Doyle Murray, appearing on this movie, John's the only one that played his on-screen brother. Joel plays one of the guests at John's party, while Brian plays Bill's on-screen father. What else have I got here? The leader of the Street Musicians insulted by Bill Murray is Paul Schaefer. The others are Miles Davis, David Sanborn, and Larry Carlton.
That's awesome.
Carol Kane would get upset at having to rough up Bill Murray in the scenes together. Really?
She obviously went for it, though. Jesus Christ. She obviously wasn't that upset.
She got over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, totally.
When Frank throws water on the waiter, he sees burning. He says, "I'm sorry, I thought you were Richard Pryor." This is a reference to an event in Pryor's life. Whilst freebasing cocaine, accidentally set himself on fire and ran down a busy street in Los Angeles. How do you set yourself on fire?
It's amazing. Like, only the second time you're telling that story, do you now kind of, wait a minute, you set yourself on fire like the first time. That didn't seem like that big a deal. I'm like, wait a minute, on second review, that does seem a strange thing to do. I mean, I don't know what it's like. I'm not even sure what the term freebasing cocaine really means.
No, I'm not.
Is that just a fancy way of saying loads and loads of cocaine? I don't know. But either way, I've got to assume it's a lot because it ended with him being on fire. So yeah, bad day at the office for sure.
So Bill Murray turned down the lead roles in Rain Man, Big, and Cocktail to make this film. Big, Tom Hanks, and Rain Man and Cocktail, played by the human stain that is Tom Cruise.
Jesus Christ. I mean, jokes aside with the whole Tom Cruise thing, Bill Murray's done absolutely fine, but those are three fucking roles to turn down.
Oh, yeah, they are insane roles to turn down. The sling-mounted GEM-134 minigun used by Lee Majors in the beginning of the movie was the same stage prop used by Jesse Ventura in Predator.
Yeah, I can only imagine there's one of those. I don't think you can just find those laying about. So yeah, I'm not supposed to hear that at all.
Some characters have trouble remembering the name of the boat on Gilligan's Island, a show on which Richard Donner worked. And I'm going to end it on that fabulous Richard Donner. That's all I got, mate.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm not going to add any of this because, again, there's so many, and I don't want to kind of end up repeating things. But, I mean, usually we kind of cover legacy. It's weird with this because, obviously, there were no sequels. We've already mentioned about it being a somewhat beloved Bill Murray performance, so I guess that's part of its legacy. But I guess the big thing is like where it falls in the grand scheme of things in terms of A Christmas Carol adaptations. And I'm sure loads of people have different opinions, and I think Christmas movies, maybe more than any other, it's linked to, like we mentioned in this film, we both love it. A big part of it is that we grew up with it, that we watched it so many times. I know a lot of people say, oh, I love Jingle All the Way, because I grew up watching it, despite the fact that Jingle All the Way is actually a little bit shit, if truth be told. But, I think, personally, I think it's between this and A Muppet's Christmas Carol. I think objectively, probably A Muppet's Christmas Carol might be a better film. But for me, this is my Christmas Carol, as it were. This is my choice, and I think it always will be. Despite the fact that, is it objectively the best? It doesn't matter. It's a Christmas film. And that's the beauty of Christmas films almost, is that a lot of people, like everyone loves Elf. Elf's not as good as people. Like, it's okay. It's fine. People get carried away. It's no Scrooged. No. I'll tell you that much.
I'm not huge on Elf, but then again, I'm not huge on Elf because Will Ferrell belongs in the same place Tom Cruise does.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Will Ferrell's so good, dude. He's so good. Will Ferrell is not the problem with that film at all. If anything, the first half of Elf is amazing because they just let Will Ferrell do Will Ferrell. And it's only the second half when it becomes overtly schmaltzy that it kind of, falls off the cliff a little bit. So there's just another thing we completely disagree on. But hey-ho. But yeah, as I said, I think I'm pretty sure, I haven't actually read up on this, but I'm pretty sure I heard before that Christmas Carol is the most adapted novel of all time in terms of adapted into movies, which wouldn't surprise me because there's so many made-for-TV versions, so many kind of loose translations, etc. And I do think, even though it's like my favorite, I still think this is in the pantheon of most beloved interpretations for sure. And again, I think a big part of that is that Bill Murray performance at the front. I don't think people look back at it and think, oh, that Richard Donner film. Don't get me wrong, Richard Donner's a fantastic director. We're talking about a guy who directed the first two Superman films, did the Lethal Weapon saga. But when people think of Scrooged, they think of Bill Murray, don't they? There's no two ways about it. I think that is the true legacy of this film, is that, I don't know where this sits, if this sits on that, that front page on IMDb, when they have like movies they're known for. I'm not sure if Bill Murray, if Scrooge is going to be on there. But I think for a lot of people, this film's going to be in that kind of top 5 or 6 role. If you said, oh, what films has Bill Murray been in? After, Ghostbusters, Lost in Translation, stuff like that, I was like, I wouldn't be Groundhog Day. I think Scrooge is probably pretty high on the list.
I think Scrooge is going to be high. I mean, it is a big Bill Murray film, in my opinion. And again,
it really is.
Christmas. Bill Murray doesn't do Christmas films. He hasn't done Christmas films since. It's not like an actor that would. It's his Christmas film, so you would think of it. It's like if you mention Will Ferrell, people are going to mention Elf.
100%. Yeah, I don't think most people. If you're asking if you did Pointless, for instance, I think if you ask 100 people on the street to name Bill Murray films, I don't think 88 people are saying Broken Flowers. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think a lot more people are going to say Scrooge. And I wouldn't be surprised if on that list, Scrooge was 4th on the list of all-time most popular Bill Murray performances. And, it is, despite how he might feel about the film, as I said, I think it just about gets the tone right. And I think, again, a big part of that is the fact that you want Bill Murray, despite the fact that he is a dick. I think in the wrong hands, this doesn't work. So yeah, I think that is the legacy of this film. I think it's one of the most popular adaptations of one of the most beloved books of all time. And it is one of the most memorable Bill Murray performances, for sure.
You said as well, so many adaptations of Christmas Carol. And it's not like it's going to stop.
Oh, 100%.
There will be so many more to come. It will just keep being adapted as time goes on.
And you can see why. It's the best things of Christmas. It ties everything into it as that Christmas message. Everybody loves ghosts at Christmas. It's weird how ghosts. I'm not sure if it's because of this. I'm not sure if it's a chicken egg situation, but there is this whole ghosts and Christmas just seem to go hand in hand together. It's quite bizarre. But I don't think there's a Christmas narrative which it can be retold in so many different ways. And I actually think this is one of the smartest retellings. Again, I don't think it gets enough credit for being, this is 1988 and it's so incredibly meta, but it almost kind of gets brushed aside under the weight of Bill Murray's performance. But yeah, it's a really clever film, and I think again that is the true legacy of this film. In terms of soundtrack, there's a few things. I mean, I've already mentioned, as much as I love Danny Elfman's score, it sounds like a Tim Burton movie to me, which then makes me think, why did Tim Burton never make a Christmas Carol movie? Because you think he'd be, we talk about ghosts and the whole gothic aspect. I think maybe not now because Tim Burton's kind of gone off the deep end a little bit, but like 1992 Tim Burton doing a Christmas Carol, I'm 100% on board for that, despite the fact it's obviously never going to happen. But a big part for me is the actual soundtrack, and obviously the song at the end. The Put a Little Love in Your Heart by Annie Lennox and Al Green.
Yeah,
I love that song. And it is bizarre. Like, the song's so good that you almost forgive the fact that he goes full Ferris Bueller at the end of the film. Like, he breaks the fourth wall. He starts talking to the audience. It's like, as you're watching the film, he's talking as if he's, you're seeing this in the cinema. Nobody's seen this in the cinema since 1988. So we've had to put up with that ever since then.
You think they would have cut that out, wouldn't you? You think they would have cut that out for home release?
I thought maybe, but I think the big part is just like everyone kind of gets on board because the mood by that point is so positive. It's so manically positive because of his performance. And then you bring in this absolute belter of a song. And I'm not sure if you've ever watched the music video. Annie Lennox is very much being Annie Lennox. Al Green is being a fucking lunatic. I always thought Al Green sounded like a woman singing a song. I always thought he did, but he is really going for it in this music video. So if you do get a chance, it is very much in the E17 kind of vibe, where it's just them singing in the snow, but it just has clips of the movie. But yeah, Al Green is doing some Al Green shit, that's for sure. But yeah, great score. Like I said, the soundtrack. When I think of the soundtrack, I just think of that song. But it's a great way to end the film.
The score and the soundtrack. Before we move on to video games, I wanted to go back because I was looking at the adaptations, and there's a 2013 film starring Taron Manning as who would be the Scrooged character. Mm-hmm. But one of the characters in that is played by Eric Roberts, who
brilliant.
May or may not have been in his underwear on a magazine in this film. So
honestly, check it out. Honestly, if you can find that scene, you'll be able to find it. If you found like Cats on TV scene from Scrooge, you'll be able to see it. They're holding the magazine. It's a full page ad of a dude in his underwear. And to me, it looks uncannily like Eric Roberts. Like if they just stuck Eric, speaking of, and just before, sorry, this is completely out of the blue, but you talk about sneaking things into this film. They absolutely crowbarred that Richard Burton impression into this film. It was like, there was no need for it at all, but they were just like, wait, Bill Murray can do an impression of Richard Burton. We're going to get in the film come hell or high water. The only thing I will say is this is the second week where we'd be able to find a Welsh link. So I'm not sure if every film now I'm going to be trying, like last week we had Bonnie Tyler. This week we've got Richard Burton. Next week, I'm off the top of my head, I'm not sure where we're going to get the Welsh link from, but I'm going to have a good look for one.
The Richard Burton scene as well. We didn't mention her, the Fratelli's mother.
Yeah. Again, really going for it in that scene. Oh, please, have a little drink for me. Do the impression. It's like, okay, but again, I feel like that whole scene is just like, they were just like, almost, they were talking, they had a few drinks one night. He ends up doing a Richard Burton impression. And of course, it's 1988. Richard Donner's doing cocaine, and he's like, "Well, dude, we're gonna get the impression into the film. Of course we are. We have to." So that's what happened. Again, I think it's another one of those cocaine equals good idea equals Richard Burton impression in Scrooged for no apparent reason. But I enjoyed it all the same. And as I said, it's another Welsh link in another movie. So
and he did it very well as well, to be fair.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. It was really good. It might be even better if it was just a terrible impression. It's just like, what the fuck's going on? In terms of video games, there was no, you won't be surprised to hear, there was no video game adaptation of this. There was actually a video game adaptation of Disney's Christmas Carol for the DS, the Nintendo DS, but that was more of like a mini game selection / visual novel. I can't say I ever played it. It actually looked quite pretty when I looked at the trailer though. In terms of what I'd want for this, because it really doesn't make sense, all I could think of was I would just go full Scrooge from, you remember DuckTales?
Yeah.
Well, DuckTales, the video game, was made by Capcom in 1989 for the NES, and it's one of the best NES games. And it's basically just Scrooge McDuck bouncing around
on his walking stick, like a
walking stick. Yeah, he goes to space. The soundtrack was amazing. The visuals were great. It's a really well-made game and one of the best kind of like, TV adaptations for video games, certainly of the kind of late 80s anyway. And There was actually a sequel to it as well, 1993, which was less known, but I think still pretty decent, still developed by Capcom. But I'm just thinking like DuckTales 3, but it's just Frank Cross jumping around. So it's basically a mod. It doesn't make any sense. It's just Frank Cross jumping around on a pogo stick in a 1989 style NES platformer. Because really, other than that, I can't think of anything half decent. But hopefully, you can come up with something better than that, which shouldn't be tricky in fairness.
Do you know when we disagree hard, and when we agree, we're pretty much on the same
really
page.
agree. Yeah. It's nothing but extremes.
I went mod as well,
yeah, obviously,
but I went the Sega route. And I went Castle of Illusion, Mickey's Castle of Illusion.
That's almost the same fucking game.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
That's really weird. I mean, I guess thematically might make slightly more sense just because it had a character called Scrooge in it, but yeah, it's basically the same game. So yeah, well, if we're on the same page, we're going for a bizarre style mod game, but it's got Bill Murray as Frank Cross in either an 8-bit or a 16-bit platformer, which makes no sense, but why the fuck not, I guess.
Yeah,
well, that is a bizarre way to end that film. So I guess all that's left is the ratings and the recommendations. I mean, from my perspective, as I said, objectively, I don't think it is necessarily the best film. I think it's a 4-star film. I think it's a very good film. I don't think it's without its faults. I think tonally it can be a bit inconsistent. That doesn't stop me from absolutely adoring this film. But again, if I was objectively rating this film, I think it's a 4-star. Would I recommend it? I've recommended it to everyone. Everyone. And I'm amazed how many people haven't seen this film. I'm like, you haven't seen Scrooged? I was like, in my mind, it's one of the kind of the Christmas films. You know, I was so surprised to hear that. People, like when someone says they haven't seen this, it's like, oh, you haven't seen The Muppets Christmas Carol, or you haven't seen Jingle All the Way, or something along those lines, or Elf, or some shit. But I'm like, you haven't seen Scrooge? And I think, despite the fact that it is mega 80s, I think it totally holds up because I think the effects still look great. It's a really well-directed film. Like, this isn't, you know, like I keep coming back to what's it called? Jingle All the Way. That's not a great film. Like, you can go back. Like, I'm not sure if I would tell somebody you have to watch Jingle All the Way, because I kind of have a soft spot for it because it's Arnie, but it's not brilliantly directed. It's not brilliantly acted. This film is well acted. It is well directed, and it's a Christmas Carol. You can't go wrong with a Christmas Carol. It's just a fantastic narrative structure for a film, and this only adds to that. So yeah, I'm totally on board. So 4 stars and 100% recommend.
This film will stand the test of time, as you've already said. It all still holds up, and I think it will still hold up. The good thing about this kind of story is it needs to be a period piece anyway. So I know it wasn't a period piece like in the 80s when it was released, but as it goes on, it stands well. It teaches you, like, don't be a dick, like, ever. Don't be a dick. Not just at Christmas, just be a good person. And it's done really well. And like I said, it will stand the test of time. I've already said multiple times that it
has stood the test of time. This film's like 35 years old. Yeah. It's totally stood the test of time.
I watch it every year. I've watched it every year since I was a kid. It's usually my Christmas Eve movie, but it's moved now to do this podcast. Spoiler, we're not doing it on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would recommend it to others. I have recommended it to others, as you've said. I'm so surprised when people turn around to me and say they haven't watched it. It's like, well, get your act together, sort yourselves out. But
well, like you said, it's strange,
in regards to the rating, it's a 5 for me.
That's fair enough. I'm not going to argue.
Everything holds up. Everything stands to reason within it. I enjoy everything. It would be a 4 if it wasn't for Bobcat Goldthwait. That's what pushes it to the 5.
Maybe that's why I've knocked it down. Yeah. You know, I talked about tonal inconsistencies. Yeah, that motherfucker right there. But no, I totally agree with that. And as I said, it's clearly an 80s film, but it's like everyone understands the idea of corporate greed. And I think everyone still loves Bill Murray. I don't look at this film and think it looks old. I think it looks of its time. It's clearly an 80s film, but it doesn't feel like an old film to me when I'm watching it outside. Like you said, there's those difference between films which looks like a film which was filmed in the 80s versus a film which looks like it's set in the 80s. And again, if you made the argument like, oh, this was filmed more recently, but was just set in the 80s, you could almost believe it because fundamentally it's a very well-made film. So from that perspective, it hasn't aged as much as some other films.
A film that stands out for me like that is a film called Turbo Kid. It was filmed in like 2015, but it's meant to be one of these films that was filmed in the 80s, but about a post-apocalyptic future of 1997. You could honestly believe that it was filmed in the 80s. but set in 97, even though it's done so well. And same with this one.
But that's the opposite, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, what I'm saying,
like you said,
I agree with you in regards to the fact
that falls in.
Sorry, I agree with you in the fact that even though it was filmed in the 80s, you could totally believe that this was filmed last year if you didn't know who Bill Murray was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the complete opposite, as you say. I mean, that's the other end of the spectrum. But, if you took something like Commando, you're not going to believe that anybody filmed that other than any other time than in the 80s. Everything about it is just so aggressively 80s. And this, yes, is 80s, but it's so well made. I mean, a few weeks ago, we did Willow. And I was saying, other than the latter half of that film, especially in HD in particular, there are long stretches of that film where you're like, that easily could have been filmed. I think you could trick a lot of people into believing that was filmed 5-6 years ago. Like, it looks that good.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I'm not saying this film looks that amazing. There are a few instances with special effects, but again, one of the things we keep coming back to is that so many of the effects are physical. Like, there's only one scene I can think of when Lou like pushes him through the window.
Yeah,
and the bit with the ghost when he sticks his head through the door. Those are about the only effects where you're like, oh, it kind of ages it, but the rest of it, because it's physical, you're like, it still looks fantastic.
How did we both not mention as well? Oh, come on, Lou, they'll think I'm a suicide as he's pushing it through. Like, that's where his mind goes.
Yeah, that's the first thing he goes to. Yeah. Well, again, the idea that this film's pretty dark. Like, there are no toys about it, and it is. Again, the same as say something like the Ghostbusters. You can watch it on two different levels. Of course, like when I was a kid, I wasn't noticing all these lines.
No.
I wasn't noticing the dark satire or the meta nature of the film. I was just like, oh, I like Bill Murray. This is Christmas Carol. I'm on board. He's funny. And then you watch it when you're older and you watch it in a slightly different way. But the fact of the matter is, like the original Ghostbusters, it works totally on both levels and works at the same time. Yeah. And that's why maybe you are right. Maybe it is a 5-star film. I've said 4 because that, perhaps I was a little bit too worried that I'm kind of like bogged down by nostalgia, because I am so, like you, I am so connected to this film. Like, it's just, I can't remember a Christmas when I didn't watch Scrooged. So fundamentally, it's like I've probably watched this film as much as nearly any other. Especially as I get older, there's no film where I'm like, oh, I definitely watch that every year. I know some people do. They're like, Apocalypse Now, I watch it every 12 months or something. Well, for one, that would be insane, as good as Apocalypse Now is. But there aren't many films where I'm like, oh, I watch that every year. But Scrooged, I totally do. So I've seen it maybe more as many as...
With Christmas movies, they will be the ones that you watch every year. More than any other film going. Mm-hmm. You watch it at that time of the year, only at that time of the year, but you watch it every year. And this film is definitely one of them. So Scrooged is... As we've already said, it is one of mine and yours favorite Christmas films, which Scrooge today as well. That's been our second in our Christmas spectacular, our 4-episode Christmas spectacular. So if there's nothing else really to go on with about Scrooge, I think then we might as well just put myself out of my misery and let me know what we're watching next week.
Yeah, next week, we spoke about this earlier, about the difference between Christmas movies and movies set at Christmas. And I think this film blurs the line maybe more than ever. I'm going to go for Gremlins next week, another film
great choice.
Which
great choice.
I've seen so many times. But I would argue a film that I would happily watch in March. I don't necessarily have to watch it at Christmas, but... Unlike, say, Die Hard, like, it's so intertwined with Christmas. Like, a big part of its narrative is built around Christmas. And as we'll get to next week, it has the greatest Christmas story ever committed to cinema, which I might just quote in its entirety next week. So that's something to look forward to. So yeah, next week, as the third of our 4th part Christmas podcast spectacular, we will be doing Gremlins.
And spoiler alert for that, Rob had a crush on Phoebe Cates.
Dude, that's everybody had a crush on Phoebe Cates. Phoebe Cates, oh my God, 80s era Phoebe Cates, good God above. Anyway, we'll get to that next week. So thanks as always for joining us. And please join us for our very long conversation about how hot Phoebe Cates was in 1980, whatever. But thanks for listening, guys. Much appreciated. Oh yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review. And leave us some 5-star ratings as well, but make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.